Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Craig, are you ready?
Hold on. A 1, a 2. I have something ready. Give me a second. Passion couldn't take no more. It ain't no lie. He kicked his ass out that door. Ernie, bye, 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 bye. All right, I'm ready.
You're ready? Oh my God, we're so happy, Craig!
All right, everyone, welcome to a special emergency broadcast of Podcast versus Everyone. Ernie Kent has been fired edition. Man, Jeff.
I'm so I am so full of joy right now. And I don't know how many of the listeners are like regular readers of Coug Center. I imagine most of them are. I've obviously been on the Can't Stand Ernie train for a few years now, but I'm also not typically the kind of person to dance on someone's grave. But when that grave is filled with $4.2 million and the guy will, basically lay in a lawn chair on top of that grave in the sun while not cleaning up the mess that he made. I have no problem dancing on his grave and being incredibly excited that I no longer have to watch him coach my basketball team.
Yeah, it's just an instant loss of apathy. Like it's just it's been so sad that we had to basically start this podcast to force ourselves to talk about the basketball team because neither of us could come up with any reason to write about anything outside of like recaps, about the team. And suddenly, now we're looking for a new coach. The coach that I should be honest, it's funny. I was watching the game with my sister yesterday, and she has played a lot of basketball, had a lot of different coaches, ran a lot of different offenses. She played junior college ball and all that stuff. And she obviously doesn't watch them that much, but she's just watching the Cougs play offense, and she's like, what offense are they trying to run? It looks like they aren't doing anything. I'm like, welcome to Ernie Kent, man. Like, she's like, I think they're doing pass and screen away. I'm like, I told you, it's like Reckley Pollock.
Yeah, that sounds remarkably like something I have said repeatedly, which is just like
2 days ago.
2 days ago, I have no idea what they're trying to accomplish out there. So with that, Craig, I am gonna crack a celebratory beer, and it's not the one that I told you I was gonna drink before.
Oh.
So hold on.
Ah, beautiful.
So I'm going to have a Sticky Hands from Block 15. And so I kind of thought how I'm going to tie this in thematically. So the Sticky Hands are Ernie Kent's money grubbing paws that are going to be grabbing all that money on his way out the door. But this is one of my favorite beers, and it is best consumed fresh. I know you like to let it sit for a little bit. But I like weeks, it. Yeah, I mean, I like it as fast as I can drink it. They're really good about canning them and distributing them right away so that you can drink it within a week or two of when it was canned. And so I'm drinking this in celebration of a fresh perspective, a fresh coach, and a fresh outlook on WSU basketball.
Yeah, I just went with some dope ass beer. I didn't go for any sort of thematic thing. So I'm starting out with here Floodland Brewing Protection Spells. It is it's a long description, but it's essentially a saison mixed with what he calls acid beer, which is just a really tart beer. So he blends it, and then it's re-fermented on Hawaiian Punch Pluots. So Yeah, he mentions Yakima Valley, where I'm from, on here. But so Floodland Brewing is probably most of our listeners are not familiar with it. But if you're familiar with Holy Mountain Brewing, this guy started at Holy Mountain Brewing, and they had a little bit of a schism, and he went to start his own project, which is all wild ales and saisons. Um, he doesn't have his own brewery. He brews mostly at Sea Pine, the wort, and then he takes it back and ages everything in oak. This, for most, the easiest access to get his beer is to be in the club. That's the only way you can get any number and any quantity of the beer. So I was one of the first 200 people to sign up for his uh, club. So I basically paid him money for beer that he had yet to make. Just because of my faith in his ability based on what he made at Holy Mountain. And it has been, that was about 2 years ago, and has been one of the best decisions I've ever made from a beer perspective, because he does occasional kind of he does occasional online sales where people can buy like 3 bottles, and but you have to be on a waiting list and like be really quick on the draw. But I just get, I get an email and he says, all right, you have 2 weeks to fill out your allotment. I always max out the allotment, of course. There's a certain number of beers included with the membership, so that basically you pay for those beers, and then you have the opportunity to buy more beers. And so my cellar is just starting to fill up with these. He has basically a quarter or 5 times a year release, and I end up buying 8 or 9 bottles in each time. And so these are very special to me, because they're exactly what I was looking for. There's these very well balanced, not acidic. They're just like perfectly made sour beers, or sour saison and saisons. And he only uses fresh fruit. He won't use any fruit puree, which is common in a lot of fruited beers. So his beers are very seasonal. He ages them in the bottle, so he's like, drink these beers right now. So this is his 2019 version of Protection Spells. Just a glorious beer. It is not purple. The label. It's a little bit almost red from the Hawaiian Punch Blue Lots. It's a beautiful beer. It's kind of this pinkish reddish hue. It is fucking fantastic. Like, it's just, you get the fruit flavor. It's just beautifully balanced. It's amazing. I love this brewery. It's everything I wanted in a brewery, and I'm so happy about it. And so it pretty much, my happiness as to how much I am about Ernie Kent being gone is pretty much how I feel about this brewery all the time. So yeah, I tied it in. There we go. I can tie it in. This is rated 5 Gardner Minshew's out of 5, or 5 Ernie Kent firings out of 5. How about that?
There we go.
Yeah. So So I mean, like you said, paying that dude 4.2 mil still,
Yeah.
and I am so proud of Chun for just pulling the trigger anyway, man.
Yeah.
But just let it go. That Oregon game was the perfect ending to that era.
And I got to tell you, this beer has never tasted better. Never. Never taste, and it's a damn good tasting beer too.
I get 2 whole bottles of this beer. There's probably about 500 made total, 400 or 500.
Yeah.
So I cherish these Floodland beers. So I was like, who else would I open tonight? One of my favorite, my favorite American brewery, and so cheers to that, man. I have a couple other beers too, because the readers don't know the little inside behind the scenes. My laptop wasn't charged, and if you have it plugged in, it creates a horrible buzzing sound. So Jeff and I had to delay the podcast a little bit while my laptop charged. You might hear my my girlfriend laughing really loudly in the back. My sister's over. She watched Beatrix tonight, so we could go to Captain Marvel. It's pretty funny. I didn't we were looking forward to this. It's like the second movie we've seen since Beatrix was born, and we were so excited about it, and so we booked the movie tickets, all this stuff. I made enchiladas tonight. They were delicious. So I had missed the news initially. I know you had pinged me to publish the post that you wrote months and months ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a sec, because that's pretty funny.
And so, but I wasn't even looking at my phone. I was making enchiladas, and so I was in the middle of eating enchiladas, and then I can't remember why I checked, because I usually try not to check my phone during dinner. Just I don't want to do that with B and stuff. Try to be a good dad.
Good dad.
But there was something that made me check the phone. Oh no, because I'm doing MyFitnessPal, so I was logging my calories or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at Slack, and I'm seeing like publish, and then like I'm scrolling up, and I'm like, holy shit, no fucking way.
Yeah.
Like I knew if it was gonna happen, it was gonna happen like today, tomorrow. Yeah, it was gonna happen, soon. There's no reason to delay something like that.
Yeah. It did surprise me though a little bit. Not so much. I mean, like, I don't sit there and go like, oh my God, that happened so fast. I'm totally shocked. Like, it's not shocking, but at the same time, I was sort of like, I don't know. I think we all expected maybe there might be a couple days. Maybe Chun tries to, and we'll get to the money thing in a sec, but maybe Chun tries to negotiate the buyout down, or tries to negotiate how it's going to be paid off, maybe extending the terms, something, right? So I wasn't anticipating it happening within 24 hours, to be honest. I mean, you got to figure they didn't fly back last night from Vegas, or maybe they did, but I doubt it. The game didn't get over till 11. I doubt they were, they had a flight on standby, so I'm sure they flew back this morning. So when the news broke, I mean, if we're kind of piecing this timeline together, the news broke at what, 4:30, something like that. So I mean, if we're piecing this timeline together, I mean, we're talking he was probably back in Pullman for 6 hours before he was fired. So
yeah.
And he may have been fired before the news leaked out too. So I mean,
yeah.
So, I mean, I went, I had, I had school today, and had my journalism club with some kids after school, and then decided, all right, I'm going to go, before I go home, I'm going to stop by the Y and, go for a run. And, so I'm running for a half an hour, and, just listening to a podcast, college basketball podcast, blissfully unaware of what's happening. And then as I'm walking out to my car with my kids, I look at my phone, and my phone starts blowing up, and I'm like, on the one hand, I'm like, oh my God, it's happening. And then all of a sudden I'm like, shit, I'm not at my computer. Shit. Like, I'm just like, I got to get this story published. And, and the funny thing was, so you alluded to it. And I think I may have even mentioned it on one of our first episodes, but there was a little thing that happened earlier this year when Ernie got delayed. It was actually the trip to Oregon, for Oregon and Oregon State. Ernie and the basketball team got delayed coming back. And we got an email from the person, the SID, who sort of, manages the press conferences. And she sent this email that just said, like, the news conference was postponed indefinitely. It just sounded very ominous.
Right.
And I was like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe Chund was just like, I'm done, and fired him mid-season. So I start writing the Ernie Kent fired story. Now, I'm thinking probably not. But at the same time, it was like so cathartic to write this story, this like 700, 800 word story on Ernie getting fired. So I write it. And then, of course, after and then it doesn't get published. So then after last night, after the game happens, I stayed up another, 30 minutes, went back through that story, updated all the records and everything else, and made it sound like I wrote it yesterday. So if you're wondering, like those of you who maybe noticed that we had an 800 word story up like minutes after he got fired, that was why. And by the way, I owe a special thank you to Kyle Sherwood, because he was the one that was able to help get it published as I was trying to leave the Y. So way to go, Kyle. Thank you. Couldn't have done it without you. And, Yeah, so that's how the sausage gets made, and oh,
Dude, so
I almost still can't believe it.
I went to the Y this afternoon. We went early to kind of get it out of the way and before we went to the movie and everything. And I was just, I like to play basketball as much as I can because it just keeps it interesting to work out. And because I went so early, there wasn't as many like kids that were just, there's always like high school kids that are just, we go to a family Y because we have a kid and they have a daycare and all that stuff. And there was just so many kids. There's always so many kids that are like taking up the courts, and you're just kind of shooting with like three other kids. But it was pretty empty. I was like sharing a hoop with like one kid. I like to do a little aerobic, like shoot around. Like I do lines and stuff like that. Just try to keep my heart rate up, so it's actually a calorie burning activity, whatever.
Right.
But I was doing a lot of like I'll do a lot like UCLA tip drill to myself to kind of get my heart rate up and stuff. And I was feeling pretty good, like jumping. Like I was going to, like I was doing, I was driving, practicing driving, shooting lanes, and I was noticing that I was getting pretty close to the rim. And back in my younger days when I weighed about 90 less pounds, I could dunk the ball pretty easily. I could go up off 2 feet and dunk it with two hands without a running start or anything. Like so it's kind of sad when I think about that. But I was feeling pretty good. So I went up I just went, I'm going to try. And I haven't dunked a basketball in a few years. I pretty much thought those days were over. And I just went up and I put down a weak one, like a pretty weak one, but I was fucking fired up. Like I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But then I went and the people that are shooting at the far end kind of stopped shooting for a bit. So I went back a little bit past half court, got a more dribble start in. Because I was just going from like the free throw line, getting a little dunk, starting, going straight at the front of the hoop, just threw one down with power, and I was like, oh my God, this is like the best. I was already just like so hyped. I'm like, I am 33, I weigh 265 pounds, and I just threw down a dunk. I'm like feeling pretty good about myself.
That's a good day.
Yeah, come home, making dinner, feeling good. I'm going to the movie. Excited to see that movie. It was a good movie. But figured it would be. A lot of friends have really liked it, so it was a good day. And then holy shit, like, what, cherry on top, man. It's funny. I was looking at my phone at the dinner table, and I turned to my sister. I'm like, Ernie got fired, and because I was a little bit in like shock.
Yeah.
And Amanda is like, I'm surprised. Like, she's like, what's wrong? Like, she's like, you're just sitting there. Like, I thought you would be like jumping around and like, she's like, I know you wanted this for so long. And I'm like, that's funny because she doesn't pay attention to a lot of my sports things, but obviously I express this opinion enough that that she knows that I definitely want it. Or maybe she listens to the podcast and doesn't tell me. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, so. But I was just like so hyped up, and I think I put on the Slack. I'm like, why did I book these tickets to the movie? I just want to like be on Twitter and Slack and just like reveling, and I wanted to do this podcast to just revel and drink fancy beer and
there has been a lot of reveling too behind the scenes. Let me tell you. Yeah, I mean. I don't know what else there is really to say about it. We're just like, we're so excited. And I know, pretty soon we're going to start looking forward a little bit because that's the fun part of this. But I don't know. I mean, how do we put into context, just how bad the last 6 years have been? And it's not just Ernie's 5 years. It's also Ken Bone's last year was, a total train wreck.
Well, before in Ken Bone's first 4 years, WSU was a run of the mill, either like bottom half like Pac-12 team, which would be like top 100, flirting with the top. Like maybe I think the Clay junior year team was around 50. That was his best team.
Yep.
But he had some really bad like seasons in terms of wins, but it wasn't. it wasn't as bad. And you saw that like when they played in the CBI, they were able to beat some teams. Like they played in the NIT, they were able to beat some teams. So because they were on a national level, they weren't horrendous.
Right.
And then Ken's last year, they just took a nosedive, and they were in suddenly, they were touching air that we thought only Paul Graham could touch ever. Like we would never like when that year when they pulled it, because I think they started the year ranked around 110 on KenPom and then went all the way down to the 180s.
Yeah.
And it was just like I remember watching that and getting to the end of the year and you're like, I never thought they could ever get this bad again after Paul Graham. Like, because before we always held up Paul Graham as like the obvious worst that could never.
Right. Nobody could ever be that bad ever.
And Ernie went and did it 5 straight years in a row. Like he added another 5 years of being that bad, and with his like his chef's kiss of this year, which has been the worst year. Flirting with Paul Graham's all-time worst KenPom ranking of 216, and so he's sitting at 212, I think, right now, and who knows, maybe with some weird results he could pass him, but I would love that, honestly.
Yeah.
But
it's that I think what made it worse and what makes me feel so okay with, basically, like I said earlier, dancing on the grave, right? It's like his attitude. And some people spin it as, oh, he's just so positive. And I'm like, like that is not the vibe that I get from him. And, and it really started during that second season. I mean, I remember when he was hired, he sort of, he went on this campaign to try and, basically sell everybody on the program, which is, a really normal thing for a new coach to do. Hey, I'm new and things are going to be better, I promise. And, come out to our games. It's going to be great. He walked around to the fraternities and sororities and said, hey, come on out and whatever. And so it was great. And then the first season wasn't half bad. The funny thing was that the Pomeroy ranking wasn't actually much better than the year before. It was only like 4 spots better. But they did win 7 Pac-12 games. And beyond that, they actually played a fairly fun brand of basketball to watch. They were one of the fastest teams in the country after being one of the slowest teams in the country the year before. In fact, Ken Bones last year, they averaged 20.9 seconds per offensive possession, which was 346th in the country.
At about 350 at that time.
Yeah, while also having the 233rd ranked offensive efficiency.
Well, I remember that our like the sin that turned us both on Ken Bone is that his teams were just unwatchable.
Right. You can't be unwatchable. You cannot be unwatchable and uninteresting. Right.
And so when Ernie came in that first year, like there was like the 108-99 win over Oregon, and we were like, okay, at least we're bad, but at least we're getting some close wins,
and we're
at least they're pushing the tempo. He still had some decent guys. That the roster. I guess the roster wasn't that much better. It was just I think the ebb and flow of the Pac-12 determined his kind of wins.
Yeah, and he had Devontae Lacey still.
He had Devontae Lacey.
Lacey's fantastic.
No, did he? Yeah. His first year he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
it was a big deal that he didn't transfer.
Okay, that's right. Yeah,
transfer.
And Josh Hawkinson emerged that year.
Yeah, he emerged as an actual player, and Ike Rebu had a pretty okay year.
Yeah, but they still were ranked really low, and like we've talked about before, the ebb and flow of the Pac-12 kind of. But Ernie's final nail in the coffin this year is that the Pac-12 was awful, and you don't have to be a stat nerd to know that.
Like historically.
Historically awful. Like you don't have to look at KenPom, you don't have to look at anything. But just results. And
Yep.
and then you know that they're bad. When the team that won 15 games in the league is like maybe might have to win the conference tournament to make the
Yeah.
NCAA tournament, that it's bad.
Yep.
Like like it's you don't have to spin it like
Yep.
you don't have to bring in any other data. And so I think that's what made it maybe easier from Chun's perspective is that
Yeah.
everyone knows this is bad. Like
Yep.
it's not just the hardcore nerds. Like everyone knows this is bad. And we thought that the crowds were bad. The crowds were bad at Bowen's final year, but I mean by
Oh,
this year they had set a whole new standard.
yeah.
Even when you're only getting like I joked 1,500 last year, but I think they had about 3,000 for UW, at least paid tickets. UW is usually like an 8 to 10,000 crowd,
Yeah.
even if we're bad.
Even when we're bad.
Yeah.
Yep. People will still come to watch that game. That's like what got me was that second year when they go 1-17 and
Yep.
they lose their last 17 games.
With
Um,
with Josh Hawkinson.
yeah, with junior Josh Hawkinson, right? And all these JUCO. This was his first go round with a whole bunch of JUCO guys.
Connor Clifford and all those guys.
Yeah, and Carlson and those guys.
Oh,
Anyway,
man.
it just was sort of like that was when it started going south. That was when Ernie started to blame everybody else. And it was like, okay, buddy, like, all right, I see what we're doing here. Like, and that's when I started to sour because I'm like, okay, I mean, you go through a rough year, it's your second year, and I mean, it's not totally crazy to go to really sort of feel the transition to a new coach, especially in basketball. It's not unusual to feel the real transition to a new coach in that second year, because sometimes players will transfer after the first year when they realize, okay, I'm not really in this coach's plans, so they transfer. You're bringing in freshmen; they're young. Okay, so second year is not always it's not always better than the first year, and so like that was kind of be expected, but it was bad. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And then Ernie's having these, the first of many, just nonsensical news conferences where he's, blaming Ken Bone and blaming whoever else he can blame. And it was, and at that point, I'm just like, okay, we're already paying this guy a crap ton of money. And, for him to just sort of like throw everybody under the bus, was a real turnoff. And then of course the style of play got worse.
Yep.
Tempo got much slower for a couple of years. The results weren't good. The Pac-12 was still terrible. They never won more than after that. They never won more than 6 Pac-12 games. So it just was bad, and it wasn't interesting. It wasn't fun. You could never look at it and think, I see reasons for hope that this is eventually going to turn around.
Well, when guys are leaving the program,
Yeah.
like just constantly.
Well, and when you see there was sort of this divided opinion to some degree on Malachi Flynn, right? Where, people are like, oh, look at, Kent picked him up when he was, and he was going nowhere. He was going to just, Podunksville mid-major, and, Ernie Kent gave him a chance and he should have, whatever. And I'm like, dude, so many players have transferred. Logic dictates that a large number of players probably hate Ernie.
Yeah.
Like that's not like, and then you see, Malachi had a tweet at one point this year, the first time Viontae Daniels got benched,
Yeah.
tweeted something about, basically about Ernie Kent and about getting benched. And
Mhm.
it was pretty salty. And I don't remember exactly what it said because I think he deleted it, but it was, the tone was clear, and
Well, and we've heard things of him just getting into full-on arguments on the sidelines, and yeah, and last night we saw that they said there was one guy definitely grad transferring, another guy looking into it, and then like 2 other players that were looking
yeah,
and so that's another 4 guys.
yeah,
I mean, you're talking like obviously the grad transfers are JUCOs that just got here.
yeah,
and they're already looking to leave after a year.
Yep. And that was Jamie Vinnick from Cougar Sports Network who tweeted that. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, and that's why I think that probably is also part of why Chun made the move so quickly. Is it's like, okay, I mean, he has to be aware that this is out there. So you make that move quickly, and you try and get a new coach quickly, and you try and keep, the guys who can play from leaving. In particular, CJ Ellaby. Try to keep him from taking off.
You want to be in the lead of that carousel too, like.
Yep.
Man, I got to think if he's willing to leave 4.2 on the table million, that he's willing to spend a little money to get another coach too.
Yeah, you kind of think so.
Yeah, and because Chun obviously sees the value in the basketball program and the value of having butts in the seats and having interest in it.
Yep.
Because it's not just revenue from the seats, but there's also just it's proven that like when you have programs that are nationally relevant, like you have higher applications and like it.
Yep.
When with a football team, but then if you can have a team that's in March Madness and people are seeing you, everyone's seeing you, there's this higher awareness university. Your alumni are happier. They're more likely to donate money. Like it's just like you feel pride. There's a part of athletics even people that might be against the the athletic parts of college, which is definitely it's not a crazy thing to be against. But it's like, what, like you and I both have far more pride in our university because of the sports programs, and
Sure.
I donate more money to the university because of the sports program, and I'm more involved with the university because of the sports program. And it feels like more of a connection, and so Sean obviously realized that. I'm glad he did. If you want to bring it down a little bit, man, I was looking at Instagram and I saw Tim Marion post something about keeping himself up or whatever. And Tim's a friend of mine, and I've known him since we went to school, and he was a manager for Tony Bennett. And so that's a bummer. I've talked about it before. I think this is the third. He was with Kembo when he got fired. And then he was with the San Jose State coach when he got fired, and now he said. So that's a part, like the assistants don't get the $4.2 million golden.
No, they don't. No,
they're left to just go look for another job. Like and they're not independently wealthy. It's not like football assistants. They're not making 500,000 plus. Like so. It's that's the bummer about it, but honestly, like, sorry man, like Ernie had to go.
Yeah, and it just is what it is, and it sucks, But
I typed out a comment on Tim's status and then I deleted it. I was like, I was just like, because I would always message him when things are going, when they had good weekends like Arizona State and the Legends Classic and things like that. But I just, it's always that thing that's in the back of your mind when you think about those guys. Like, they're the collateral damage really here.
Yeah.
And it sucks. But honestly, you can blame the guy up top, man, because it's his program and it's his results and it's totally within our right as fans to and alumni to want him to be removed. And so and again, like you said, it's like I felt worse for Ken Bone, like, because he was like just seemed a guy that was genuinely trying, just was out of answers. But Ernie just didn't seem to ever wanted to adapt to anything. Like Ken Bone definitely adapted. Like he tried everything. Like he took his, he would take his one horse and have him, shoot 30% of the shots. And but Ernie just kept doing what he was doing. Never preached defense. Even though they show those coaches huddles during the game, and he's like, "You're gonna play defense." It's like, well, if you don't practice it, like if it's not a part of your program constantly, and you're not recruiting guys that are to that mold,
Yeah.
like why would you expect it to suddenly happen? There's guys that can be just exceptional on their own, like Ellaby, and but it's like, if you're not preaching it and you're not teaching it, like it's not going to come. And there's just so much that you could see on the basketball court when they're preaching it. Like just his last game was just so ridiculously bad. And it wasn't just what Oregon was doing. Like
no.
I mean, they made it easy for Oregon.
Yep.
Because truthfully, they should have been. They were down like 20 at 17 at halftime. Truthfully, they should have been down by 30 at halftime.
Oh yeah, easily could have been down by 30 at halftime.
Oregon was playing like shit themselves. But WSU had I kept track. They had 6 turnovers in a row at one point.
Yep.
Like that's a program thing.
Yep.
Like turnovers are a coaching thing. Like because you see certain coaches that have consistently their teams have limited turnovers. And you see certain coaches that don't. And so that's one of those things that we can look to that is directly impacted by coaching. And so it's just it's so like, oh my God. Like I don't know what's coming next, man. I'll say I open up a second beer while I have the floor here. It is Jester King, which is a brewery out in the hill country of Texas. I highlighted them on a Baxter's beer.
Yes, you did.
And this is Spawn, which is the beer I highlighted, but it's the raspberry and cherry version. So this is another one of those spontaneously fermented beers like the DeGard one I talked to you about. This is raspberry cherry. This is much more of a crimson, beautiful color to it than that one I had earlier this week, which had black raspberries, which impart more of a purple color and had the purple name, of course. But this one is just a beautiful, kind of those like before WSU, before they made like created an actual crimson color for WSU that when Moose came in, when you would just get random colored shirts. And I definitely like my first Cougar shirt was like this deep, almost maroon color. I remember that I bought at the bookie during a live. And I had it for years, but finally holes were worn in it in every which way. But that's what this color of this beer is, and it's beautiful, beautiful fruity aroma, really well done, funky and great. Another beer that I've been saving for a while, and I was just like, hell, well, might as well drink it tonight.
Tonight's a good night. So I'm thinking, all right, so we've done our venting now on Ernie and all the reasons why we hated him and all the reasons why he had to go and, being a snake oil salesman and everything else. And oh, by the way, do you remember that at the beginning of this season, he assured us that they were long and athletic, and that this was going to be the best team yet under Ernie Kent and Pullman.
Just checking the numbers real quick. Oh no, worst team yet.
Yeah, let's pour one out for long and
athletic.
Maybe that's what he meant.
Oh yeah, I pour one out, but I got we had this.
No, don't pour that out.
I do have some woolite like within reach. So
don't pour that out. That'd be a waste.
No, but
But not his best team ever. Definitely by objective metrics, his worst team.
And definitely not long.
Yeah, not that long.
Athletic in parts, Marvin
spots.
Cannon's athletic, and Isaiah
CJ
Wade's
Ellaby's pretty athletic. Yeah.
CJ Ellaby's athletic.
Isaiah Wade's athletic for an undersized center.
Yeah, he's 6'7" center.
For a wing,
so he better be
center.
athletic.
Yeah. So anyway, the next coach has got his work cut out for him a little bit. One of the things that Chen said was, he thinks he has the roster to win immediately if he gets the right coach.
Nope.
Which I don't think is necessarily true, but I thought was sort of a curious thing for him to say because I mean, what greater indictment is there of the incumbent than to say, we are firing you because we think someone else can do miles better than what you could do.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of, I don't know, man. That quote from Chun was pretty, to use a word I already used, was a little salty, man. It was like, basically, I fired him because he's done a shitty job, and I'm about to hire someone who's going to do better. Like, I thought it was funny. So I guess I'll throw it back to you for this. Playing and we could throw out a few names or whatever for guys that might be candidates, but it's really, really hard in college basketball, right? Because you got 353 jobs. It's not like football where you can look at successful mid-major head coaches, high-profile assistant coaches in the Power Five, and that's pretty much your pool to draw from, right? When you're trying to think of guys. College basketball is so much harder because you've got, like I said, 353 programs. They're all over the country, various sizes and shapes, and and then they of course all have assistants, right? And so it's very difficult to kind of put your finger on who they might be looking at. So I think like I said, we can go down that road a little bit with a few names, but before we do that, I'm kind of thinking it might be interesting, maybe just to weigh in on what is it that you think they should be targeting. Like, does that make sense? Like, what attributes are you looking for in the next guy?
Well, you want a guy that has a system and a style, like that can recruit specific talent, not hope for the best talent. I think you and I both, when Ernie was hired, we looked at this and said, like, this dude needs fucking 4 and 5 stars for this to work. Like, because just to cover up all the other flaws. Like, because there's really no system, there's no method to it. It's just like,
it's the proverbial roll the ball out and just let them go play.
Yeah. So it is, and so obviously the most successful coach we've had in recent memory is Tony Bennett, and he played a very specific style. Now, it's kind of annoying and kind of cliche that say that it needs to be like a defensive focused coach, but you need a guy like Tony Bennett, or why can't I think of the guy's name at Wichita State right now?
Greg Williams.
Yeah,
no, Greg.
Even a guy like Frank Martin.
Greg Marshall. Oh my gosh.
Greg Marshall. Yeah, I knew you would know, but I'm glad that you got it wrong.
Good Lord.
I feel worse. I feel better.
In my defense, I've just had a large beer, so.
Yeah, but even a guy like Frank, like a guy, not Frank Martin, but like a guy like that who has like a style of play. Now, I think that it would be easier to succeed in Pullman with Greg Marshall type than Frank Martin type. But just having something, like having a program, like what we've seen in the football program is a guy has Leach is weird and he's stubborn, but he does things the way he wants it. He wants like the defense to be a certain way, which is like getting the ball back, and he just hires guys that'll do that, and basically and get the ball back quickly or any way possible, and then he has an offense that he has very minimally changed for the entire time he's been in Pullman, and it looks a heck of a lot like what he ended up at Texas Tech with. And so he recruits guys, and they're not world beaters. They're not, we've talked about this at the signing day podcast. We're not getting many 4 stars, anything like that. But hell, they've won a fuck ton of games in the last 4 years. And Tony Bennett was the same way. He was not recruiting like huge. He did it. His recruiting was understated, and his ability to identify talent is probably his best attribute, other than the pack defense. And but it's not like they were recruiting 4 and 5 star guys, but they were winning. And so you need a guy that just has a method. has a program, and I don't think Ernie Kent had the interest to build a program, and he never had in the past really. He'd just been a good recruiter, and that wasn't going to fly when he was out of coaching for 4 years, and also was now suddenly recruiting to Pullman, and not Oregon and Nike and everything like that. So I just want a guy that one and okay the overarching. I don't want to play the big sky lotto, man. Like I just don't. I've heard the guy at Montana had, but like Montana is like the USC of their conference. Like they
Right.
have resources. So to me, that's not a one-to-one comparison. Like if you're good at Montana, that you can succeed in Pullman. I want a guy that's pretty much been at the top of a conference, and it can be a low major conference, but I want a guy consistently at the top of the conference, like who has done it in maybe a unique way or something. I know this is all kind of random shit, but like I just don't want to play this lottery again of just like a random guy, like, and hope it works out. I know Ken Bone was definitely more of a calculate, like he had a pedigree of being Romar's assistant, and he was often said as the guy who orchestrated their offense and blah blah blah. And then he went to a couple tournaments with Portland State, but like we talked about on Tuesday, he wasn't necessarily building like a consistent best program in the Big Sky, and that came to fruition. So I'd hope they can be one creative, and I hope they can find a guy that has actually had success. But at the same time, UW just went and hired a guy a couple of years ago that was just an assistant for 20 years under one of the better, most successful coaches in the last couple of decades, and he just basically came in and ran the same defense, and UW is suddenly the best team in the league, whatever that's worth, when the best team can be like 50th, but whatever. But yeah, that was a rambling answer, but I want a guy that just has a fucking program, man.
So one of the things you alluded to in there was sort of about talent and how you get it and how it fits and kind of all that stuff. And it's like there's sort of this like common misconception that Tony Bennett could roll out any five guys and go win the Pac-12. Like it was like, oh well, let's just hire a coach who plays defense and runs the pack line, and we get one of Tony Bennett's disciples, someone like throw out a name, Ron Sanchez or Ben Johnson or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything will be great. And it's like that's one of the things that I think people sort of criminally underrate about Tony is that he's this amazing, and like I'll even use unbelievable. Now I hate it when people use the word unbelievable because like very few things are actually unbelievable, but like Tony is an unbelievable identifier of talent. I mean, you look at, he was a guy who was on Klay Thompson before anybody else. What his guys have gone on to do after college, Joe Harris, whatever, right? I mean, all these guys that he has recruited, and he saw something in them and then was able to, get them to fit within his scheme and really get the most out of them. I mean, the guys win an ACC titles in frickin' Virginia. Like it's like, yeah. I don't think most people understand, like what that means and what that accomplishment actually is.
Well, yeah, if you want to talk about insert the pack line, you'll win. Well, look at Sean Miller at Arizona.
Right.
He's getting top recruits. He's playing pack line. They're pretty inconsistent. Last year they got DeAndre Ayton and they were, the top team. Right. But this year they're as bad as they've been in a long time, and they play the pack line. Yep. So if it's no guarantee at Arizona, if you play the pack line, you're going to be successful. Then there's obviously something beyond just playing the pack line.
Yeah, it's more than that, and so to me, it's like it's less about what the system is and more about just having a system,
right,
or having a philosophy that allows you to maybe access some players. You mentioned Frank Martin. That was a guy I mentioned, 5 years ago, and again, not as a realistic option. That wasn't it, but as a guy who has a very distinct style that allows him to recruit players that maybe other teams aren't necessarily looking at. So one of the things that he does, he recruits, really athletic big men. Now you're like, well, WSU can't recruit really athletic big men, but what he recruits is he recruits these really raw athletic big men, these guys who don't have much of a game offensively, but they can sure run and jump, and they can, clean the glass both defensively, but mostly offensively, where they can just crash the glass and really just sort of disrupt. And he just sends waves of these big guys at people. They will foul people like crazy, and they just don't care. And it's like, okay, so, maybe there's this opportunity out there if, something like that, where it's like, okay, so we're just going to recruit these unrefined, really raw big guys who, another program like UCLA or Oregon or whatever, they're not going to want, because they're just too raw. Like they're not refined enough offensively. Right. So, whatever it is that you're going to do, it's got to be something like that. Or maybe it's like a guy who's got really strong ties to international recruiting. So that's where names like, Leon Rice, who came up, 5 years ago when he was, coaching at Boise State. Well, he's still at Boise State. Just had a little bit of a down year with them. I'm not sure what was going on there. I don't follow the Mountain West as closely as I used to, because now I'm old and I have kids and they're all older too. But I know they had a little bit of a down year, but he's got a track record of recruiting guys internationally, particularly from Australia, which has been, good for WSU in the past. Another name that'll probably come up is Mark Few's top assistant at Gonzaga, Tommy Lloyd. I doubt he would take the job. I think probably he would look at it as not necessarily, a path towards getting a truly big job someday. I do think there are some coaches that probably look at this job as somewhat of a career killer, but a guy like that, I mean, he really is the reason that Gonzaga has been so good. And I know Mark Few's a good coach and all that, fuck Gonzaga and everything that we said, 2 days ago, but we got to respect what they've done. And a big part of why they've been able to do it is Tommy Lloyd, finds these guys all over the globe, right? I mean, they've had this long, history of recruiting guys from international locations and all over the planet, basically. So, and that's Tommy Lloyd. And so, maybe you hire a guy like that who, again, can tap into a talent base that, Ernie Kent was never going to tap into. Ernie Kent walked in here and, like you said, basically wasn't even trying. Just kind of thought, I'm Ernie Kent. Kids are going to flock to me. And it was stupid and it was wrong. And it obviously didn't happen. And, so that's the direction I think that, Pat Chen needs to go. And I think some of it depends on, the budget. I mean, we don't know what the budget is.
Right.
I think, again, the general assumption was, oh, man, they're going to pinch pennies. Now I'm not so sure. I think, we talked about Kyle Sherwood earlier. Kyle said, on Slack, basically, we just, fired a guy for $4 million. We can do anything. And he was kind of joking, but he kind of wasn't, right? Like, where it's like, all right, well, maybe the budget is bigger. Maybe they are looking at it the way Bill Moose looked at Mike Leach, which was, hey, if we, it's a little bit of a risk to make a big splash, but if it pays off, then it, more than pays for itself. And so, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes. People have floated the name Thad Matta because of the connection with Ohio State between Chun and Matta.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be incredible, but
Yeah.
I just don't see it happen. I mean, Matta's a Midwest guy. He had some health problems. That was sort of part of the end of his story at Ohio State. So, look, I mean, if it happens, that'd be incredible. But for me, I think honestly, Tommy Lloyd would probably actually be my top pick. I think he'd be great. I don't know if he can coach, but I know he can recruit, and I know he can recruit from a place where WSU is probably going to, I mean, even Tony Bennett had to tap in to international recruiting. So I think any coach that is going to have any success here, and I know that the market for international recruits has gotten tighter, in the last 10 years, more and more programs have sort of turned on to that idea. When WSU was doing it, particularly Australia, there were only a handful of schools that were recruiting Australia, and that was sort of WSU and St. Mary's and And that was kind of like the two big places where Australians were going. So I know it's harder now, but still, I think if I'm thinking, a guy who maybe has a chance to, to do something big, a guy who already lives in the area and is sort of familiar with the West Coast, I think Tommy Lloyd's kind of it. I don't think he'll take it, but
yeah, to that point,
that would be the guy I would pick.
I mean, we've just there's like a rumor out, that like Mark Few tells coaches not to take the job at WSU.
Yeah, I mean that was the rumor with Leon Rice, because Leon Rice was his assistant.
So would Tommy Lloyd, who is even another close connection to him. So it's obviously that would be cool. I have no names now, man. I'm just in this mode of like, man, I wish we would have hired Eric Musselman. Like,
God, no kidding.
And now I'm like, would he come here now? But no, he wouldn't. Like, why would you?
Heck no.
Nevada would be a step.
Nevada's a better job right now. But he's doing. So this is the thing. Like, so he's a good coach, and then he's also again tapping into talent markets that other people aren't. He has been really aggressive about getting Division I transfers, so guys who have to transfer and sit. He's got, I think, 3 guys on his roster right now who are sitting out. So out of his 13 scholarships, he's got 3 sucked up by guys who can't even play right now. Because it's worked out really, really well for him. He sort of recognized that was how he was going to have to add talent. So yeah, don't get me started on Musselman. If you want to hear something cool, all of our listeners, listen to Musselman's interview on a Solving Basketball podcast with Jordan Sperber. That was sort of enlightening.
Sorry,
yeah.
You asked me earlier what I want. I want a fucking nerd, man.
Yeah.
Like, let's get a nerd in there. Let's get or get someone like Brad Stevens who will hire a nerd.
Yep.
And like, because you know what, we got to be Oakland A's. We got to Oakland A's Billy Bean this shit up. Like, we got to Moneyball it. Because the facilities are crap right now, and it's not an attractive job. Like, it's like when we're talking about the guy who's coaching in Nevada wouldn't want to take a Pac-12 job. Like, that's a legitimate reality, because it's not a good destination. And it's Tony Bennett had success here, but he's had unreal success at Virginia, and obviously not in the tournament, but I mean, he's winning ACC titles almost every year, which is, I never would have thought that would have happened, even though I had such a high opinion of him. But you see that. But when you hear people talk about Tony Bennett, they go, he even won at WSU. Like, okay, thank you, but it's
thanks.
True though. It's
Asshole.
True. And
yeah, it is true.
It's definitely true. It's a difficult job. I saw a tweet, and I don't know if it was you that responded to it or someone else that's around Preston or someone, but talking about how bad so people forget, this is from just some random WSU student. People forget being the head coach of WSU basketball program is quite possibly the toughest gig in D1 basketball. Okay. Go to a HBCU school, but whatever. Between the lack of a recruiting base and, more importantly, the lack of funding, it is a job set up for failure. It's hard to blame Ernie Kent for not succeeding. It's actually pretty easy to blame him for not succeeding.
Yes.
Given the fact that the previous 2 coaches had far more success than he did. Even Dick Bennett, the previous 3 coaches had far more success than he did. Because it wasn't, the bar is so low, and he couldn't meet that. Like, I'm sorry, but having low major level teams like every year, like I joked to you about how Iona was ranked lower than us, and they got a tournament bid, and but it was more like, yeah, we're ranked at the same level as Iona. In the not the MAC, but the MAC with 2 A's.
Yeah, the MAC.
The MAC.
The MAC.
Yeah, but actually, with their dominant win in their conference title game, they passed WSU, and now that's even a farther gap thanks to the big loss. So yeah, you're at a MAC title winner level, but you're playing in the Pac-12, which which looks like a mid-major conference currently. It's basically a touch above the Mountain West at this point. Even the Southland probably had two better teams than any of the teams in the Pac-12 this year. Yeah. The Southland Conference.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think the Southland's gonna get two bids, probably.
Yep.
Their conference title game was like probably the lowest stakes it's ever been. But the Pac-12 is probably gonna get one. Not if you listen to the Pac-12 guys. It's going to get Arizona State and UW already locked in, which no one else is saying. But that was Don McClain actually said that.
Yeah, Don McClain said that.
I mean, I know it's his job to be a shill, but geez, that dude, come on. Don't go to Bill Walton's level of that shilling. No. Although I will say, like, I've grown tired of Bill a little bit in his like Conference of Champions shtick. But it was pretty funny early in the game when LB made it 3-0 against Oregon. Bill Walton, who had never seen LB play, said, "Oh, this is the best game I've ever seen CGLB play." Which, that's funny.
And then he said it was the first game he ever saw him play. Yeah. It is pretty funny. Yeah, so
that was the last game of all time of Ernie Kent.
Yeah.
And it's a little more behind the scenes. Jeff had a different picture of Ernie Kent picked out for the firing post, and it was like Ernie looking glum, which was a good picture. It's fine, Jeff. That was a good picture.
Yeah.
But if you follow Coug Center, you know that every time WSU basketball loses, we use the exact same picture on the recap of Ernie doing this like shrugging, like I have no idea what's going on move. And that started a couple of years ago, and we've just continued it on. If you follow our Facebook or anything, you've seen that picture so many times. And so a few of us got on the Slack and we're like, Jeff, you gotta change it. You gotta have the shrug one last time, the shrugging photo, because that is just a legendary photo, at least to us. And so for one final time, the Ernie shrugging photo, and never again.
Never again. I am happy to flush that.
I finished the spawn already, and then I'm back. I saved some protection spells because it was so good. I just wanted to let it sit. I actually also haven't because I split the protection spells with Amanda, and then it took us a while to get the podcast going. She's like, "Can we split another beer?" And so I also have open an E9 Brewery Atma, which is a barrel-aged saisons, which E9 is almost pretty much on the level of Floodland for me, but just way easier to get. And this beer is delicious. Haven't even had a sip of it yet, but I will certainly be drinking that.
Yep. Well, what do you think? I think we've pretty much exhausted this thing. What do you think? Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it some more on Tuesday.
We'll talk more about the coaching search.
Yeah, it's going to take, I can't imagine it happens quickly.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if it happened.
I mean, there's still a lot of your good coaching candidates are still coaching. So.
Yep. And, and maybe, I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see how Chun goes through this and see which guys.
It's definitely going to be different than the, I'm using air quotes, searching process that we used.
Yeah, that Bill Moose went through.
Oh, one more time for Bill Moose. $4.2 million. So I think we could agree that the first rollover was fine after the first season, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
But the next two added $2.8 million to that number.
Yeah.
So he really did his buddy a favor, the only basketball coach he has ever hired. So Congratulations, Nebraska, your next basketball coach. I'm stealing this joke from someone on Twitter, and I don't remember who did it. I'm sorry. If you're listening, I'm sorry I stole it, but the next basketball coach in Nebraska, Ernie Kent.
Yeah. Maybe we can get lucky and Ernie Kent will fire Tim Miles and then we can hire Tim Miles. I'd be totally down for that.
You mean Bill Moose will fire him? Yeah.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
Wait, Ernie Kent's?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Ernie Kent was pulling the strings all the time. I'm sorry. It is so late. I'm sorry, people. It's after midnight.
It's after midnight while we're recording.
Yeah.
This is a legit emergency podcast.
Maybe we'll get lucky and Bill Moose will fire.
My first work call is with our Europe team at 7 a.m. tomorrow. So, and I'm still drinking. So
I have to teach tomorrow. So
I'm sure they'll understand. I'm sure. Well, I think your kids would be more likely to understand than my colleagues in Europe who don't even know what college basketball even means.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
They're like, what is this sports affiliated with university?
I know.
Right?
Dirk Nowitzki, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, if in some way Bill Moose, sort of like goes crazy and fires Tim Miles.
Well, now that
I would love to have it. Yeah, we could just swap. Can we just trade?
Hey, Bill, Ernie's back on the market, dude. Get your guy in there.
And we could just try. Maybe we should have done that. Maybe Chun shouldn't have fired him, and we could just, do a coach swap. They do those sometimes they do those like in baseball and stuff.
Yeah, in baseball.
That's how we got rid of Lou Piniella.
I think they didn't. The Seahawks kind of traded for Mike Holmgren.
Yeah, I mean, we traded Lou Piniella for what's his name, the outfielder, Wynn.
Yeah,
right.
Randy Wynn.
Yeah, we traded Lou Piniella for an outfielder. So maybe we could trade.
Hey, I would have traded Bill Moose for a walk-on point guard. I mean, I'm sorry. I would trade it. It's late. I would trade Ernie Kent for a walk-on point guard.
See, you did it too.
I know. I did it the other way. I honestly, by the end, I would have traded Bill Moose for a walk-on point guard, which is kind of what we did. So
him too. Yeah. All right. We should wrap this up. All right. Well, good times. Ernie Kent.
We have a Twitter now.
We have a Twitter now.
Pod versus everyone communicate with us on there, man. I'm looking at it. Jeff's looking at it. We simultaneously tweeted that there'd be an emergency podcast today.
Yeah,
there were two different tweets. So we're not even organized. So it's even better. But yeah, just tweet us out there. Follow it. There'll be lots of snark and lots of fun. And lots of links to podcasts. So give us a follow there. I was trying to set up an Instagram yesterday, but since Facebook and Instagram didn't work, I lost any momentum on that. And we'll see. Maybe I'll set it up in the next 6 months or something.
Maybe.
But yeah. Thank you for listening. We are free. We are finally free. And now we just have to figure out what the hell's happening next.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we'll be back next week. There's no basketball cadence to drive when we do it, but honestly, it'll probably still be Tuesday or Wednesday, or Wednesday or Thursday when I see the podcast. But
yeah, but we have the NCAA tournament to look forward to.
Oh, so we have to do it on. Well, we at least have to do it on Wednesday then.
Yeah, Tuesday or Wednesday. We will NCAA.
The first 4 games still don't fucking count in my opinion.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, stupid. You don't even have to fill out your bracket before then, so why do they even care?
They don't count, and everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for letting us waste another hour and a half of your life.
That's right.
And go fucking Cougs.
That's right. Goodbye.